For decades, it was treated as dead space. In the government quarter of Berlin, under the scraped foundations of the old Reich Chancellery, there was a service complex the maps reduced to a blunt label: air raid shelter and communications. That is the official story, repeated because it fits the rubble of 1945. Concrete corridors, emergency doors, a place to hide, then a place to forget. The site sat inside the Soviet sector after the city fell. In May 1945, Red Army engineers logged it, cleared what they considered useful, and sealed sections that flooded when the pumps stopped. Years later, when East German crews leveled and rebuilt above, they left the lower passages alone. Too damp, too costly, too politically awkward. On paper, it stayed ordinary. Wartime shelter, abandoned, filled with silt and silence. One detail in an early inspection note doesn't match that neat picture. A Soviet officer listed 2 parallel bus bars, heavy copper, mounted on ceramic standoffs, running through a brick throat into a locked door that was not marked as a shelter exit or a cable junction. Bus bars like that are not for a telephone switchboard or emergency lighting. They are for feeding machines that draw real current, steady, industrial, unforgiving. The report gives no model numbers, no destination, no explanation. Just that line. And then the next page moves on. What makes it harder to dismiss is what happens to the detail afterward. Later summaries, both Eastern and Western, talk about tunnels, collapsed rooms, the familiar legend of a bunker under a ruined capital. The copper is gone from the narrative. The door is not mentioned again. In translated extracts, the phrase is softened into power lines, as if precision itself were inconvenient. No one publicly asks where the feed went, or why it needed ceramics en masse. Down there, even an ordinary corridor forces you to walk differently. Shoulders tied against sweating walls, boots scraping grit, breath tasting of wet lime. A door that doesn't belong changes the whole geometry of the place. It suggests a purpose that wasn't meant to be seen in daylight, and a decision made quickly in 1945. What to record, what to lock, what to leave for water, and time to erase. If it was only a shelter, why did someone build a power spine that led deeper than the shelter plan ever allowed? The bus bars didn't stay abstract for long, because in the first dry season after the war, men went back down with lamps and pry bars, and something hard flashed beneath the mud. A U.S. technical team, allowed into a cleared section during one of the early inspection exchanges, wrote about sealed conduits of unusually small diameter, set into the concrete like veins, each stamped with a code rather than a maker's name. Nearby, a rack frame lay on its side, steel uprights, precision drilled, with the ghost of lacquered labels still clinging where plates had been torn away. In the corner of a room that smelled of rust and cold water, they noted a bank of ceramic insulators fixed high on the wall, arranged to carry multiple feeds without arcing. Not telephone hardware, not lighting. The parts were built to tolerate strain. A Soviet engineer's notebook, later quoted, never fully published, mentions the opposite end of that power run. A pressure door with a wheel handle, backed by a second door of the same pattern, creating a short chamber like an airlock. He sketched the hinges and the gasket groove, the kind you machine carefully because a gap of a millimeter matters. That arrangement makes sense for gas protection or for isolating noise and vibration, not for a shelter corridor that civilians might rush through. For its time, the mix is awkward. Post-war Berlin did not have surplus precision components to waste on hidden rooms. Ceramic standoff arrays and coded conduit runs suggest planned load and planned secrecy. The double-door chamber suggests controlled entry, yet the official function remained communications and refuge, as if the space only needed a few cables and benches. Then the dates start to slip. One Allied memo places the removal of electrical assemblies in late June 1945, after the section was supposedly flooded and abandoned. A Soviet log lists a night work crew on the same level in August, when the pumps were officially out of service. And an East German maintenance report from the early 1950s complains about unmapped voids below a new foundation line. Voids that should not have existed if the lower complex had collapsed as claimed. No single contradiction proves intent. Together, they create a rhythm. Activity after closure. Equipment where it shouldn't be. Paperwork that refuses to align. By 1945, there were programs known only to a narrow ring. Technical scavenging. Rapid exploitation. Projects that moved faster than public records. Some documents hint at alternate objectives without naming them. Others speak in the careful language of special handling. The implication is modest, but heavy. The underground space may have been used for more than survival. If all of this was harmless, why do the components appear, disappear, and reappear only as fragments, each one leaving just enough trace to make the next emission feel deliberate? Once those fragments are laid side by side, the official explanation stops being sufficient, not because of imagination, but because the math no longer works. Researchers who returned to the files decades later did not chase rumors. They followed inconsistencies that refused to cancel each other out. The deeper problem is absence. Multiple inventories refer to annexes that are no longer attached to any surviving report. Technical appendices are cited, then missing. Names appear in staffing lists, electrical specialists, acoustics engineers, only to vanish from later personnel roles, as if their involvement had been deliberately narrowed out of history. In Soviet archives, entire folders jump from one month to the next with no transition. Western records mirror the gap. The lack of data begins to look as structured as the data itself. A few testimonies sit in that quiet space. A Red Army signals officer, interviewed in the 1970s, recalled being ordered away from a lower machine room because his clearance was insufficient, an odd restriction for a bomb shelter weeks after the war ended. An East German construction foreman later described vibrations underfoot during night shifts in the early 1950s, long after the site was declared inert. His statement was neither confirmed nor denied. It was simply excluded from the summary. None of these accounts were disproven. They were just inconvenient. From this, several restrained theories emerged. One suggests the complex functioned briefly as a controlled testing environment. Isolated power, thick walls, limited access, used to evaluate captured equipment under stable conditions. The heavy electrical infrastructure supports that, as does the rapid post-war activity. It was never acknowledged because the work fell between jurisdictions and ended quickly. Another proposes a monitoring role, not communications in the civilian sense, but measurement, vibration, resonance, structural response, requiring quiet zones and isolation chambers. The airlock-like doors and unmapped voids align with that need. Such work would have produced results that aged poorly once political priorities shifted. A third theory is simpler and harder to publish. The space was a temporary solution to a problem no one wanted to document. And when that problem was resolved, the solution was dismantled and erased. Below ground, the architecture supports none of these cleanly, and all of them partially. Corridors narrow without warning. Doors lack labels. Cable trays end abruptly, cut rather than disconnected. In the lowest sections, light dies fast, and sound behaves strangely, as if swallowed by the walls. Every feature feels intentional, and every intention feels unfinished. If even one of these explanations is close, then after the war, the priority would not have been preservation, but removal. And that means The most decisive actions happened after the fighting stopped, when attention had already moved on. The end of the war did not bring clarity to the site. It brought efficiency. Between 1946 and the early 1950s, decisions about the underground complex were made quickly and left thin paper trails. Some passages were deliberately flooded, not by collapse, but by redirected groundwater. Others were backfilled with crushed brick and capped. Access points vanished beneath new construction zones that were declared off-limits even to routine inspectors. The rationale, when recorded at all, was practical. Instability, cost, irrelevance. The speed of the work suggested something else, an urgency to simplify the past. What disappeared was not just space. Equipment listed in early inventories no longer appears in later ones. Cable runs end in clean cuts. Mounting frames are described once, then never again. Entire sections referenced by coordinates cease to exist in subsequent surveys. In later technical descriptions, those rooms are treated as if they were never built. No transfer records explain where the material went. No disposal logs account for its removal. It is simply absent. Decades later, a small detail surfaced that did not repair the record, but disturbed it. A photograph emerged from a private estate sale in the 1990s, a grainy image of a concrete corridor with a distinctive ceramic insulator array mounted high on the wall. The angle matched no publicly accessible section. The photo was undated, unsigned, and never officially authenticated. Analysts noted it, filed it, and moved on. It changed nothing, and yet it didn't fit. The official history remains intact. The complex was a shelter. It was abandoned. It deteriorated. Nothing of consequence remained. That account is repeated because it closes neatly. What it does not address are the power systems without destinations, the work crews after closure, the rooms that vanished between drafts, and the traces that appear only once before being edited out. There is no final document to overturn the narrative, no revelation waiting in a sealed archive, just a pattern, purposeful construction, brief use, systematic erasure. Whether the most important elements were never found or were found and removed cannot be proven from what survives. What remains is the outline of an answer shaped by absence, and the quiet suggestion that, in this case, history did not forget. It was made to let go.